So we've entered part 3 of our discussion for location design and visual merchandising. And we're really focusing more on the design aspect today. We covered location previously, and now we're moving into how do we make it a really inviting and enjoyable space that customers like. There's a couple of objectives when it comes to design and visual merchandising. And the first of those objectives is to increase sales. This is, again, our central idea in class over and over, but it relates to everything in a unique way. So to increase sales, the objective is that you want to have customers spend as much as you can get them to on any given visit. And to influence this, you have to be concerned with what the customer is buying and also how long they stay in the store. Because research has shown that there is a direct correlation between how long a customer stays in the store and how much money they buy, or how much merchandise they buy. One of the most common ways that you see increased sales taking place in apparel and textile retailers is to influence unplanned or impulse purchases. There are long-standing pieces of advice that are given to apparel and textile retailers about how to increase sales. One of them is to dress up mannequins in a complete look so that you're showing the customer an inspiring new way to put the merchandise together that they may not have thought of before. And so then this prompts the customer to walk around the store and gather those items to put it together. Another piece of advice when it comes to increasing sales is to not crowd too much merchandise onto a rack. Because if it's too crowded, the customer does not want to take as much time to look through it because it becomes a hassle. They have to push things around, they have to get in other people's way, and it becomes less motivating for them to find things, even on a sale rack. Of course, there's always going to be those shoppers where that's not true, but that has been found to be a pretty common finding. The second objective is to control your costs. So in order to make your store look nice, of course you need to spend money and gather resources. But you also want to make sure that you're controlling the cost of doing this so that it's not negatively impacting the business. And another aspect of this is not only creating the design of the store initially, but also maintaining the appearance through different seasons and different stock turns in the case of changing your inventory. So when you control cost, you can do this through things like your amount of labor that's required, the flexibility that you have to move merchandise around in your store, and also the amount of support materials that you purchase. So support materials would be wall hangings that you might use to establish a certain theme of decor, or mannequins, or even things like fixtures, which we are going to talk about on Thursday. One of the things that your textbook discusses is the idea that you might not think that labor has a direct correlation with store design, but if you have a store that has departments separated out, for example, into separate rooms or in very separated areas of a department store, you're going to not be able to have those employees floating around as much as if you had an open floor plan. And so it's going to require more people because you have to have people stationed in each department to make it work. That means you have to pay more people and have them working constant hours to fulfill those requirements. One store that makes pretty wide use of this is Macy's. And so they have different departments for, you can see on the slide here, Macy's Men's. This isn't a whole separate sort of retail space that's right next to the main Macy's, but there's a doorway that connects to it. It's just in a separate space with pretty much 4 separate walls. Here in Oregon, Macy's also has this configuration, but with the juniors department instead of the men's department. So in this case, the cost of labor is going to increase. And then your third objective is to build loyalty. And store design and visual merchandising goes a long way towards this objective. The whole point of building loyalty in the context that we are talking about it is creating positive experiences so that your customers will return. And if they return, this is going to build their loyalty because they're going to talk to other people, they're going to remember that they had a positive experience, and they'll watch out for sales or different types of promotional events. So there's 2 types of benefits that customers can get that make a positive experience at a retailer. There are utilitarian benefits and there's hedonic benefits. When it comes to utilitarian benefits, what we're talking about is enabling customers to locate and purchase products in an efficient and timely manner. And the key to this, if you are purchasing in an efficient and timely manner, you are doing this with minimal hassle. So your needs are being met and your time is being respected. So then, as the name suggests, utilitarian, this means that the purpose of the retailer is functional, that it has a utility of sorts. So it's functioning to provide you with the product that you are seeking. One of the biggest ways that people often associate utilitarian benefits is with grocery stores, though that's a little bit out of the realm of apparel and textiles. When you go into a grocery store, you know exactly where to go because you go to the same one quite often. So you can quickly go in, get what you need, go out. If we were to apply this to an apparel retailer, a utilitarian application would be if they group like items together. So in retail, this is known as grouping like with like. So for example, you can see in this picture here on the slide that this retailer has placed long sleeve shirts together for the fall, and then hats, socks, ties, and bags. And even though these objects aren't like necessarily, They're not identical or even from the same product category, but they might all be worn together in different configurations. And so this gives efficiency to the customer because they don't have to hunt around the store for different things that they can mix and match together. This is creating a sense of efficiency for the customer. This is also a form of curation in the context of retail, which is one of the themes we have in class this semester. So utilitarian benefits can come from providing customers with a curated option of pieces. And then the second type of benefit is hedonic. When we talk about hedonic benefits, this is when you are enabling customers to have an entertaining and enjoyable experience. And we know from research and also just from living life that if you have a positive experience, you are more likely to do it again, because you are going to associate that with something that was rewarding to you. So if we apply this to retail, your textbook talks about the outdoor store Cabela's, and they create this sort of wildlife environment in their stores. So they have taxidermy animals and different types of wildlife displays, like tanks of fish from the region. And so this not only provides you with merchandise to look at and shop for, but it also takes on sort of this amusement museum sort of atmosphere as well. You also have the example of REI. So there are some really big locations of the outdoor store REI that have things like giant climbing walls in them. And so you can go and, depending on the location, you can either go in for free or pay a small fee to do it. And then you come to associate that particular store with some type of enjoyable activity. And that brings you in more often. I remember when I was younger, there was a store in a mall where I grew up that had a basketball court in the back. And me and my sister would always go into that store when we went to the mall just to play basketball. And so they were achieving a hedonic benefit. Even though we had no spending power really, they got us in the store and our parents had to come retrieve us. And so they got adults in the store who did have spending power. So that's another way to think of bringing people into the store is children first and then adults. Moving into the more specific elements of design, there's 5 main areas that we're going to talk about. And we're mostly going to cover layout and signage and graphics today. But in addition to those elements, we've got the display of merchandise. So how do you display it on racks? Or is it displayed on a wall? And in what configuration? And then you have the interiors of the store. So how are the walls decorated? What's the flooring like? Is it really crowded? Is it really spacious? And then you have atmospherics. So atmospherics are things like scent and things that you would hear, so music, or some outdoors companies have animal sounds playing. So all the little things you do to accentuate the visual component of the store with what you hear and sometimes taste if there's samples or smell. So let's begin with talking about layouts. One of the most common layouts that you can have in the retail space is the grid. And grids are often, as you can see with this example that comes from your textbook on the left, grids are often applied to grocery stores or stores that have a lot of convenience-based staple products. And the way that we define the grid layout is that you've got a lot of parallel aisles with high shelves. And then you have one central location of cash registers towards the entrances or exits of the store. And in the case of the grid, this most often works for customers who are seeking utilitarian benefits primarily or only. So if you want to get in and get out, the grid works really well. And one of the reasons that it's easy for people to find things in the grid is because not only do you memorize where to go, but it's a really easy floor plan to follow. So you can, it's not a maze in any way. There's lots of entry and exit points. And you can navigate around people because it's fairly spacious. So that's one example of a grid. Now, if you look to the right, this is an example of a clothing store grid. And how you might see this set up is with different situational categories of products for, say, women's apparel. So in one quadrant of this square grid, you might see career apparel. And in another quadrant, you might see activewear, lingerie, and then maybe accessories. So it has more, it's more of a literal grid, but it's sectioned out based on the situation in which it would be worn. So the main thing to remember about grids is that it's often very department-based. You're categorizing things so that the customer can find it easily. One of the main limitations of this layout, though, is that there's a lack of flexibility. So once you have this layout in place, you're pretty married to it because you've laid flooring that leads around to different areas, and you've likely installed some pretty industrial fixtures to meet the demand of the product that's being stocked. The next type of layout is the racetrack. And the way that we define the racetrack is when you have a central aisle that loops around the entire store. And the purpose of this aisle is to guide you to look at all of the merchandise that's throughout the entire store. So if you have to walk around this loop to see what you're looking for, and it's towards the end of the loop or even halfway through, you've now just seen a large portion of the merchandise that the store is currently selling, more than you might have if it wasn't set up that way. And you'll have cash registers that are often at different points along the track or the aisle so that there's a convenience point for you to pay for merchandise. You'll also see with a racetrack layout that the fixtures are pretty low so that you can see the merchandise over in other areas or departments. And that's a way to entice you to go look at other things. You'll often see the racetrack in stores that are medium to large size and in department stores. So as you can imagine, this lends itself very well to the department store setup. And that's why you see it quite often in this type of store. One of the advantages that this layout offers is that it's pretty flexible. So you have sectioned off areas where some types of merchandise will be located, but you can change things around fairly easily depending upon, of course, the building and the different maybe limitations that you have for changing different aspects, such as walls or any type of decorative fixture. The other, well, one of the, I think, other disadvantages to the racetrack layout that's important too is that it can be a little difficult to keep it interesting for the viewer who is looking at the merchandise in the store, because you have these departments that are pretty close together. And so it's hard to have a different visual theme for each department without it looking too cluttered or busy. So you often have to have this very uniform visual theme throughout the store. And even though you're changing merchandise from season to season, you don't necessarily change things other than signage in a racetrack layout. Then we have the freeform, or what's also known as the boutique layout. And this layout relies on a very asymmetric pattern. So you're not doing things with any sort of grid or specific layout in mind. It's more what works for you and where you want to place it. And I think this example on the left comes from your textbook. And I even think that this example is a bit too organized for what freeform can often be. So a good example of freeform that you can see on the right, this is Anthropologie, and they are a great example in the retail world of a freeform layout because they have different round fixtures, they have linear shapes, they have kind of wavy shapes like you can see in that bench here. And they're just positioned all around the space. There's no real aisle system. It's just kind of how you navigate is up to you. However, the drawback for this is that even though it works well for a small store, it's pretty costly because it relies on having a visual theme that changes fairly often. The other aspect of this that makes it costly is that because you don't have other departments that the customer is traveling around to, you're not going to have as much traffic. And therefore, you might not have as much sales volume. You'll also notice in the picture that the fixtures are fairly large. And so another disadvantage is that you'll have less room to stock merchandise because you have a lot of space being taken up on the sales floor with these support materials. And our last type of layout is called the soft aisle layout. When we talk about the soft aisle, this is when you achieve the layout that you would like by arranging your fixtures in groups around the sales floor. And you create natural aisles with the formation of your fixtures. So instead of having a change in the flooring, for example, in a racetrack layout, you would have a different color of tile or carpet on that central racetrack aisle. Here, the aisles are being created through the alignment of the fixtures. So you're guiding the customer without giving them a roadmap. And oftentimes when the soft aisle layout is used, you rely a bit more on displaying merchandise along the walls. And there's more and more stores that are employing this layout, and oftentimes customers respond really well to this because it still has some element of organization, but there's also flexibility in what you can change with your visual themes from season to season as well. So next we have our signage and graphics. This is another one of our main design elements. Signage and graphics are really important because they help customers to locate different things within the store. So they can provide information to you, such as the price of something. They can also indicate if there are any promotions currently happening in the store. So there's a difference between signage and graphics. Signage is used to identify the location of a merchandise category and also the types of products offered in a category. And then graphics are meant to reinforce a store's image in a visual format. So in talking through these terms, if you look at the image on the slide, this is an example from a New Balance store. Is this an example of signage or graphics? Graphics, right. So graphics, because it's giving you a visual of the store's image, so who they project might wear their product. And it's also very minimal in text. So it's relying more on the image than it is text. It's also not really telling you where a certain department is or the type of merchandise. It's more displaying who the customer might be and what the store is about. So that would be the difference there. Now, graphics, of course, as we just talked about, can have some text, but it's not really going to be identifying text. So that's the main difference between the two. They'll both have a little bit, but a graphic is more about descriptive and image or brand wording, and signage is about location-based wording. So there's 4 types of signage that you have to know and be able to identify. The first is call to action signage. And this type of signage is placed in locations around the store. And the purpose of it is to tell you how you can engage with the retailer. So this type of signage might be if you see a QR code next to a product, and it's a new product that demonstrates some type of innovative material. So let's say it's a Skechers shoe. They're constantly reinventing the materials they use, and so it might be some type of new memory foam in a shoe sole. So the QR code might lead you to see a demonstration of how the shoe is put together. It also might direct you to social media pages. So it might, sometimes in dressing rooms, I've noticed recently, I was in a dress barn with a friend the other day, and in the dressing rooms, there's a window cling on the mirror that says, take a picture of your garments as you're trying them on, use hashtag #MyDressBarn. So that's one way that they're asking you to engage with them. The second type of signage is category signage. So this is used within a department to identify the types of products that you offer. And it's meant to showcase a certain area of the product category. And so it's going to be located right next to or on top of the fixture that holds that product. So you often will see this in retailers that have a variety of styles of jeans. You're going to have signs that indicate skinny jean, boot cut jean, dark wash, light wash, etc. The third type of signage is promotional. And this is exactly what it sounds like. You're describing special offers to the customer. And these could be special offers that are found in the store and outside of the store. So it could be that there is a sale going on that's buy one, get one free. Or you even might see signage where it says, sign up for our email newsletter and receive some type of discount or coupon. So that would be a form of exterior promotion. Another way that you'll see promotional signage is stores that have an in-store brand that they sell at an everyday value price. So Macy's has a line that they merchandise it as their everyday value brand, and coupons never apply to it, but it's always a much lower price than you'll see other merchandise sold for. So this is a promotion as well, even though it's constantly in effect. And the last type of signage is point of sale. And this is very specific information about each product and style. So it's placed near the merchandise, and it's meant to give you descriptive information that will help you in your purchasing decision. So it's going to tell you the price. It's going to tell you things like if it's on sale, and if it is, how much. It'll probably tell you the style number, so that if you need to have someone look for it in the back or at another store, you can use that information to do so. So looking again at our images to apply what we're talking about, this is signage at Kohl's, and they have been at the forefront of this movement to use digital signage. A lot of stores are going this way as a sustainable practice, because that way, instead of changing out all these paper signs all the time, you can just reprogram them with different prices and information. And more stores are doing this all the time, but Kohl's has really pioneered this technology at a affordable price for retailers. So if we're looking at this digital signage, what type of signage is this?
Point of sale.
Yes, it would be point of sale. And why would it be point of sale?
Because there's a sale sign on top of the thing.
Yeah, so it's giving you information about the sale. And actually, this could be another type of signage as well. So primarily, the point of this sign, at least the digital sign, is to give you information about the sport coat and what the brand is, etc. But it's also promotional signage because it's telling you about a special offer found within the store. So the point of talking through this example is that much signage that you see in retail stores actually functions with more than one intention when it comes to types of signage. They'll often incorporate 2 or more of these types. And that adds to the amount of information the customer receives and gains in terms of building loyalty. So now we get to the point where we've started to talk about designing our store. But in the grand scheme of things, how do we plan these choices? And then how do we evaluate them once we've put them into effect? So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. For those of you that have worked in or are currently working in retail, do you have experience working with planograms? Anyone? Couple people? Okay. So planograms are a diagram that shows you how and where to display the merchandise for a new stock turn or a new season. It gives you an exact measurement of where to place things, at what height, on what shelf, and how many should go on the rack. They're typically created in some type of computer program as a line drawing, very similar to the one you see on the slide. But sometimes there are companies like larger retailers that will have artist renderings done. This is a much more costly option because it's meant to be functional, not necessarily artistic. But those are some different options that retailers have. The purpose of a planogram is to cut down on the necessary labor that a store needs to incur on top of displaying the merchandise properly. Often what you have with big retailers is a built-in team that dresses windows and does the visual merchandising. But if you are a mid-level to smaller retailer, you probably have a team of managers and associates that's responsible for this task. So what they do is devise these plans in a corporate office or higher up in some way, and then they send them out to all of the locations if it's a chain store, so that it's detailed enough that managers and sales associates can install it. So you can think of it like a step-by-step guide that you can follow to put together an effective and engaging display. Next, we have a couple of very technological options. So there's the option of virtual store simulation and also videotaping customers and putting spatial sensors in the store. Now, videotaping customers sounds very invasive, and it can be. So there's a lot of retailers that are trying to go the route of these spatial sensors and virtual store simulations. And we're going to look at some examples of how this works in the TED Talk that we're going to look at. But just to give you an idea, a virtual store simulation is going to help you decide if your planogram is effective before you implement it. So what you'll do is have a group of customers that's going to wear this technology that tracks your eye movements, and they are put in front of a program that has the store visible in 3D format. So it tracks the speed that they're traveling down an aisle, what they look at, and for how long. And there's also different buttons or handles they can press to indicate that they're picking an item up off a shelf and putting it in their basket. So what this does is allow the retailer to test out what they think a customer will find engaging and see if that's actually true. So this is another type of retail job that you might pursue, is being involved in consumer research. Very lucrative field. Moving on to discussing the video and spatial sensor options, there are some ways that retailers install cameras beyond for security purposes to watch consumer behavior. And they might be installed on shelves or on racks, or even sometimes in ceilings. A lot of customers have objected to this in recent years with all of the discussion there's been going on publicly about consumer privacy issues. So the alternative that's been used is spatial sensors. How many of you have played with that Xbox Connect game? Is it Xbox?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I thought I had it right. I'm not too big into games, so I always mix those up. But stores are now using that Connect technology to read customer behavior in the store, and then they're able to visually map out exactly how often, again, the customer is standing in front of a display and what they're standing in front of. So if you look at this image here with the blue map of the store, this is a heat sensor that's telling the retailer how many people were located in certain areas of this grid layout store. And you can do this for different parts of the day or different days of the year. So it just kind of depends on what data you want. But you'll notice that the highest number of people are over to the right in that little red area. So there must be something really enticing there for them to look at. The rest of the time, you can see that they're kind of congregated in that center aisle there, along the end caps. So what a retailer might infer from this image is that there is prime real estate for visibility of product on these end caps. And they might want to install displays with new merchandise or very popular merchandise in those locations. To give you a break from me, we're going to transition into our TED Talk. And this is a consumer behavior specialist, Ray Burke, and he's going to be explaining more of these evaluation techniques and also showing examples of how they work. So this is about 15 minutes long.
I'm delighted to be here today. Well, I wanted to share with you a little bit about my background and my interest in watching shoppers. Okay? So to understand my fascination with this, we need to go back to my first job, which was at Cardinal Camera Store. So I was hired as a salesperson when I was 16 years old. And this was my dream job because I loved photography and I really enjoyed interacting with people. But I discovered that the salespeople in this store worked on commission. And it actually turned out to be very competitive. So we'd stand at these glass counters and customers would pull up in front of the store and they'd walk in and we'd try to size them up and see, who are the big spenders. And, you get different types of shoppers who come in. So one type of customer, they were just there to browse. And it didn't matter how much time you spent with them or how many cameras you showed them. If they were going to buy anything, they were going to go to the discount store that was down the street. Other people would come in and they were there just to pick up some film or some photo processing. But there was a third group of shoppers and they had bigger plans in mind. They may have had a wedding that was coming up or a vacation or a birthday party. I remember one occasion where we're standing there and this old truck, this pickup truck, pulls up in front of the store and the back was filled with junk and this guy gets out and he comes into the store and it looks like he hadn't showered in a week. And the other salespeople, they scattered. But I saw when he came into the store that he was walking with intention and his eyes went to a display case that had some of the nice cameras. And we struck up a conversation and I learned that his wife was expecting their first child. And they wanted to get some really nice pictures and they'd been saving up for this. And so we looked at some different equipment and he ended up getting some nice gear. So I learned from this experience the value in watching shoppers. Now, I still watch shoppers today, but I have more sophisticated tools. For example, at the Kelley School's Customer Interface Lab, we have tools that allow us to simulate the shopping experience. In some cases, we actually build out part of a store with shelf fixtures and checkout lanes, and we use eye tracking technology. In others, we use virtual reality simulations to recreate the appearance of the store. So, for example, we've simulated mass retail stores and grocery stores, specialty retail stores. So this is an example of a gourmet food and wine shop. Now, the advantage of the lab is you've got a lot of control and a lot of flexibility, but in some cases, we actually have to go into the stores, bring the lab into the store to study shoppers in their natural environment. Now, we will, in some cases, use, you go into the stores and you see the security cameras that are used for property loss prevention. We've used the data collected from those cameras. We've also looked at shopper behavior using our own cameras in the store that use 3D imaging. So we can measure not just where the shopper is standing, but their skeleton position, where they're reaching, where their head is facing, their facial expressions. And we have software that automates the coding of this and is able to capture this information anonymously. Now, occasionally, you'll read stories about this kind of tracking. And in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, and they tend to have headlines like Big Brother is watching us or spying in the aisles. And so they have a very negative tone. So you might ask, Ray, why do you spend so much time and energy watching shoppers, especially when there are these legitimate concerns about consumer privacy? And the reason is because I believe that through these insights, you can improve the customer experience, you can increase customer satisfaction, and increase business performance. So how do we do this? Well, if we watch what people buy, we can infer what their needs and desires are, and even anticipate what those needs will be in the future. If we watch shoppers, we can see the points of engagement in the shopping process and the points of friction, the obstacles to purchase. And then we can modify the experience and improve the shopping experience and observe shoppers' behavior. So our goal here is to optimize the shoppability of the store. Let me give you an example from some research that we've done with Marsh Supermarkets. Now, Marsh is right here in Indianapolis, and they've actually been very innovative in their use of technology. 40 years ago, Marsh was the first retailer to use the UPC scanners. So, when you go into the store and you check out. Now, originally, they used those to improve operational efficiency at checkout. But that information is captured and it provides a rich source of consumer research. So let's take a look at a receipt from a shopper. What can you learn just by watching what people purchase? Well, this shopper, they picked up some sliced turkey. This was just a few weeks ago. Some Roma tomatoes, and some peaches, okay? Well, because this person uses a customer loyalty card, and most shoppers do, we can track their purchases over time. So again, we're back in March a week later, and what's this person buying? Some sliced turkey, some peaches, and some Roma tomatoes, okay? So if we want to build the loyalty, if we want to reward this shopper for their loyalty, we can send them, we know their contact information, we have their information from the loyalty program. We can send them a mailer for peaches, we know they like that. Maybe send them some coupons, even give them a recipe. It turns out that about 85% of what you buy is basically the same from one week to the next. But we can learn more than just people's preferences for individual products. So now let's go to Keokuk, Iowa. And this is a shopper who visited a Walmart, and they picked up some Diet Pepsi, an Atkins bar, and some Slim Fast. Okay, so it looks like someone's counting calories here. Okay? But you wonder why they're also buying Cheetos and ice cream and popsicles, okay? Maybe they have got kids in the family, okay? Well, if you look just a few days later, they're back in Walmart again, and they're buying Major League Baseball cards. So it does look maybe like they have a child, at least one child in the house. And they're buying dog treats, okay? So it looks like they might have a dog as well. A few days later, they're back in the store, and they're getting some fishing hooks, so they like to fish. And they're buying marine oil, so they actually have a boat. So as you look across these transactions, you start to get a picture of the household, the profile of the shopper, the DNA that's going to drive their purchases in the future. Now, it's not enough just to know what people's needs and desires are. We also need to understand how that interacts with the store environment. So we've done research where we approach shoppers and ask them to wear a special pair of glasses that have a little camera. And it tracks where they're looking as they walk through the store. So what do shoppers actually see as they go through? Well, it looks like they're on roller skates, right? I mean, this is the actual speed that the shopper goes through. They have certain products in mind, they see what they're looking for, grab it, boom, they're on to the next product category. Okay? So what do shoppers actually see as they navigate through the store? Well, they tend to scan horizontally, about 4 feet off the floor. So this is a heat map that shows the concentration of visual attention. They notice special displays, so like a 2-for-1 promotion for potatoes, or in-aisle displays. They spend 2 to 4 times the amount of time looking at these than the surrounding products. So the store environment has an influence, but also their goals have a powerful influence on their visual attention. So let's say that you're in the store, you're not actually shopping for produce on this visit. You tend to look towards the center of the display. On the other hand, if you're shopping for tomatoes, this is what you see. Or if you're strolling past the bakery and you're not shopping for donuts, this is what you see. If you're shopping for donuts, it's like the whole display case lights up. All right? So how can we help shoppers to find what they're looking for in the store, to connect what's in their mind with what's physically available? So we've done these simulation studies where we manipulate the shelf displays and measure the amount of time it takes for shoppers to find the products. So let's say that you're looking for Frosted Cheerios, and you just have the name Frosted Cheerios in mind. It takes you about 9.4 seconds to find the product on the shelf. On the other hand, if you have a picture of the product in mind, it only takes 2.5 seconds to locate the product. Or let's say that we pick a different product. This is Golden Grams. Now, if you have a picture of the product in mind, it takes you about 5.7 seconds to find the product. But there are other products on the shelf with a similar appearance. Cheerios are also in a gold package, shredded wheat. What if we ask you to find a product that's more distinctive, like Apple Jacks in the green package? It only takes you 1.1 seconds to find it. Now, one of the tools that the retailer has to help you to find products is the number of shelf facings, how much space they allocate to products on the shelf. If we look at Post Bran Flakes, with 2 facings, 2 packages that are visible, it takes about 3.3 seconds to find the product. If we expand the amount of space that's allocated to this product, it's reduced to 2.1 seconds. Even how straight the shelves are in the store influences the shopper's ability to find things. So, you know, you go into the store, it's a Saturday afternoon, and things look really picked over. If you're looking for Golden Grams in this situation, it takes about 8.2 seconds to find the product. But just by straightening the shelves, we're able to reduce that to 5.7 seconds. So again, there's some simple things that retailers can do to help you to find what you're looking for in the store. Now, let me take you to a different context, which is apparel shopping, and show how we can apply some of these examples. The retailer that I worked with on this project, they allocated about half of their floor space in the store to men's products, but only 30% of their customers were men. And only about 20% of their sales were the men's merchandise. And we observed shoppers. We actually put a special panoramic camera in the ceiling of the store that could, and wrote some software to track people. And so here's what men would do when they'd walk into the store. They would walk through the entrance and they go to this lead fixture. That's where a lot of the new products were shown in the store. And then they would walk to the very back of the store. So what's in the back of the store? It's the sale, the clearance stuff, right? And then if they didn't find something that they liked, they'd walk out. So how do we connect with shoppers in the center part of the store? Well, we did a couple of things. One is we looked at the sales data, again, to try to understand what consumers' needs are. And we looked at the products that men were buying and the outfits that they were putting together, because men struggle to put together outfits. And we created this, what we called a style center. But the other insight that we had was as we watched men shop, they would pick up a product and then they would try to fold it and put it back on the shelf, and they couldn't fold it the right way. And that discouraged them from picking things up. So what we did was, instead of doing the normal crease fold, we just took the product, folded it in half, put it on the shelf. Those two changes caused an 85% increase in product touch and a 40% increase in sales. Now, I haven't changed the assortment. I haven't changed the prices. All I've done is do a better job of connecting what the shopper has in their mind with what's physically available in the store. Now, if we want to see where the future of retailing is going, I think we can look at how innovative retailers are using these insights today to improve the customer experience. We did a project a couple of years ago with the Retail Industry Leaders Association and looked at some best practices. One of the things that we need to do is provide effective navigational aids. If customers don't see the product and can't find the product, then essentially it's not for sale. So Auchan in France uses simple color-coded maps that you can read in the time it takes you to take the escalator up to the store entrance. In this Boots pharmacy, there's no question about where to pay for the merchandise, right? Now, you know, you laugh at the size of the sign, but people's visual acuity is decreasing as we have an aging population. And we need to show the product. The product is the goal object. It's what draws the customer into the store. It's what energizes the shopping experience. So I'm not a big fan of cauliflower or broccoli, but I salivate when I look at this display in Central Market in Plano, Texas. Another example comes from Disney. This is the Once Upon a Toy store in Orlando. So they have these little figurines that are in cellophane packaging. All they did was they unwrapped the package and put example figurines in this plexiglass display case. Their sales went from 40 items a week to 900 items a week. We also need to give consumers information that they need to make their purchases. Now, when I'm buying avocados, I don't need to know a lot, right? Is it ripe or not? So SuperQuinn provides us with this information. New products are the lifeblood of retailing. They keep customers coming back. They bring customers into the store. So retailers need to showcase new items. This comes from the Fashion Show Mall in Las Vegas. And what they have is a runway. It's motorized. It actually comes up out of the ground. And 3 times a day, they have fashion shows. And the models are wearing the apparel from the retail stores in the mall. And they're able to increase their sales by up to 30% just by showing the fashions on the runway. So by using these insights to improve the shoppability of the store, I think it benefits everyone who's involved. It benefits the manufacturers because shoppable stores clearly communicate the benefits and the value of the brands that are being sold. It helps the retailer because it creates a convenient and enjoyable shopping experience that creates satisfied customers who are loyal and come back. And it enhances the experience for the consumer because they can find the products that they're looking for. So where's the future going here? Well, technology is going to continue to provide us with more detailed and comprehensive information about shoppers. But companies have to recognize that this data is the property of consumers and the retail stores where they shop and should be used just for their mutual benefit. And if they don't respect consumers' privacy, they're going to lose the trust of the shopper, which is going to undermine the relationship, which is the foundation for business success. Thank you very much.